Alright, this is Learning Target 4A. Unit 4 is imaginary numbers. So we're talking a little bit about imaginary numbers. 4A is about simplifying radical expressions containing negative rational numbers. Well, a negative rational number is an imaginary number. So needed background knowledge. The square root of -1, square root of -1 is I. So that is an imaginary number. If you do square root of a negative number on the calculator, it'll say non-real. Non-real meaning imaginary. So let's get into example 1. So example 1 here, we have the square root of -36. I'm going to break this up into square root. And the -36, I can break it up into -1 times +36. You can break this up even further into the square root of -1 times the square root of 36. Well, we know the square root of -1 is I, and the square root of 36, you can break that down in with the trees, 6 and 6, and then we have, those are pairs, so it's I times 6. Well, with numbers and variables, we'll write the number first. So the answer here is 6i, so the square root of -36 is 6i. Moving on, example 2. So let's break this up. We have the square root of -1 and the square root of 98. Square root of -1 is I. Square root of 98, let's break that down. We have 49 and 2, prime, 7 and 7, those are prime. And since this is a square root, you need pairs. So let's rewrite this. We have 7's on the outside, I is on the outside, and the square root of 2, since it does not have a pair, will stay on the inside. Example 3, we have the cube root. Careful now, it's cube root of -8. So we have, let's break it down, we have cube root of -1, and then we have the cube root of 8. You have to be careful with cube roots of -1. If you think about -1 cubed, that is -1 times -1 times -1, which is -1. So when you take the cube root of -1, it actually is -1. So the cube root of -1 is -1. Square root of -1 is I. So then we have 8. 8 is 4 times 2, and 2 times 2. And since it's a cube root, we need 3 groups of 3. So it comes out as a 2. -1 times 2 is -2. So the cube root of -8 is -2. If you think about it, -2 cubed, -2 times -2 times -2, what is that? Well, that is -8. So the cube root of -8 is -2. Further on, we have the cube root of -108. So first we have the cube root of -1, and we have the cube root of -108. We already know that cube root of -1 is -1 from the last example. 108, that can be broke down into 54 and 2. And for this, you can use your calculators. We have 54 is 27 and 2. 27 is 9 and 3. 9 is 3 and 3. So let's look at cube roots. So I need 3. We have 3 3's. So that'll come out. So let's rewrite this. We have -1 from the square root of -3, or -1. We have a 3 from the groups of 3, the group of 3 3's. And then underneath the cube root, we also have, the 2 times 2. 2 times 2. And now let's simplify that. We have -1 times 3 is -3, and the cube root of 2 times 2 is 4. So we have -3 cube root of 4. This will conclude 4A. Now we also have 4 B notes today that you're going to have to do for next class. And learning target 4B is just to simplify powers of I. That's all we're doing is simplifying powers of I. So, needed background knowledge. I to the first power. That's just I. I squared. So I squared. This might need, break it down. I is the square root of negative 1. That's what I is. And if we square that, what we have from our last unit, we learned that square and square root are inverses of each other. So I squared is actually negative 1. So now if we try to simplify I to the third, we have I to the third is, so if we think about, we have square root. So I to the third is square root of negative 1 times, or let's do square root of negative 1 to the third power. Square root of negative 1 is I. And if we break this down even further, we have the square root of negative 1 times the square root of negative 1 times the square root of negative 1. Well, let's look at this a little bit further. We have, if you have 2 square roots of negative 1, that's just like the square root of negative 1 squared. And I also have this other square root of negative 1. This one here. So the pair, I'm going to write it like this. The reason why I'm going to write it like that is we have square and square root cancel, which gives you negative 1. So we have negative 1 times the square root of negative 1. And the square root of negative 1 is I. So we have negative 1 times I, which is just negative I. So to look at that a little bit further, I'm actually going to erase it. And I'm going to show a little bit simpler way. That was actually explaining it all up. If you look at I to the third, what you're going to be doing for 3b is you're going to think how many I squareds can I get out of that? So remember that I squared is negative 1. So I squared is negative 1. How many I squareds can I get out of I to the third? Well, just this one, that's it. And then there's also another I left over. So I squared is negative 1. And then negative 1 times I is just negative I. Maybe that's a lot easier way to think about it. The other way explains it out with a little bit differently, but same concept. Moving on to example 1 here. Okay, I to the 6th. How many I squareds can I get? How many I squareds does it take to get to I to the 6th? Well, it takes 3 of them. Which each I squared is negative 1. Multiply those together, and you get negative 1. Instead of writing it like this, it might be easier to write it like this. I squared, and with our power rules, you can write it to the third power. 2 times 3 is 6. And I squared is negative 1. Negative 1 to the third power is negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1, which is negative 1. This is usually how you'll see me write it in class. You can, otherwise, you can write it out the other way. That same way might work best here. So I squared, how many can I get out of 24? So there are 2 times what is 24? 12. 2 times 12 is 24. I squared, remember, is negative 1. So negative 1 to the 12th power, negative 1 times negative 1 12 times. And that will end up being actually positive 1. For example 3, and the last example, I to the 25th. Well, again, think I squared. How many I squareds can I take and divide out of 25? Well, I can divide 12 out evenly. That only makes up 24. So what do you do with the remaining one? Just multiply it over next to it. I squared, remember, is negative 1 squared, or it's to the 12th. Negative 1 to the 12th is positive 1. And so positive 1 times I is I. So our answer here is I. Your quiz will be to simplify I squared and the simplified I to the 8th. Come to class with questions, and have a good weekend.